At Strayer University, we help students like you go from, is it possible? To anything is possible by offering access to up to 10 no-cost gen ed courses, so you can reach your goals affordably and fast. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. No-cost gen eds provided by Strayer University affiliate Sophia. Eligibility rules apply. Connect with us for details. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
Oh, tasty high note. Oh, hi, don't mind me. I'm practicing my new baritone sax. I just heard PayPal's paying for people's stuff every day for 100 days, and there's 10 million up for grabs. All you have to do is use PayPal checkout online. So there's never been a better time to buy a few things off the old wish list. Like this leaf blower! PayPal could pay for your purchase. The Great PayPal Checkout.
No purchase necessary ends July 18th. See official rules at paypal.com/thegreatpaypalcheckout/terms. Participating merchants only must use PayPal checkout online. Coverage of up to $100 and eligible purchases per card.
Hello and welcome to Sappy episode, whatever episode number this is. I'm not even going to try to keep them straight because things change. I do these things and I think I know what number they're going to be, and then I decide to switch things up, and who knows. And I know that in the May Peng show, I got the episode number wrong at the onset, so I'm not even going to try anymore. And you don't care anyway, so it doesn't matter. This is a discussion I've been wanting to have for some time. I will tell people right now, the book that Tony King wrote is fantastic. If you're a listener to the show, you're going to want to check it out because his career is so encompassing of so many artists that we love, and he was there, and boys, he had a story to tell about all of them within the constraints of legalities and all that stuff. But get this, he kept diaries. So this is not just somebody remembering things 50 years on and trying best they can, or calling up frantically everybody they ever worked with and trying to get their stories out of them so you can present them as your own. No, this is not that. And he is a canny, observant guy, very sensitive to an artistic sensibility, which was the secret of his success with the people that he worked with. He got it. He knew how best to present them. In his way, sort of like a Brian Epstein, in that he knew how to capture the essence and present it and make the world fall in love with these people, or at least want to hear the product that they were putting out at the time. In any event, this is my conversation with Tony King, which took place in two parts. And I guess in the States there might be issues getting the book. I have a copy of it right here, and I bought mine through Canada. But I think you can go through Amazon and find it. And if you are outside the States, then you should have no problem getting it. It's published by Faber, who of course are based in London. Do check it out. And if you have seen the May Peng documentary Lost Weekend, Tony is featured in that, and he does write quite a bit about that whole period in his book. So for that alone, to give a little bit of background, he, like so many others who became rock artists out of Britain, fell in love with Heartbreak Hotel when it came out, and that was his sort of prompt to put himself on a path to a career in the music industry. He was not a musician or a songwriter or a singer per se, but he got in as a teenager with Decca Records. Anyway, it's all told in the book. We talk about it a bit in this discussion. He ends up working for the Stones. He's already met the Beatles by this time and is friendly with them. He ends up working for George Martin. He ends up working for Apple. He ends up working with John and Ringo in the 70s. Goes on to work with Elton John at Rocket Records, who he has had a personal friendship with going back to the Reg Dwight days. He kept that lifelong to this day. Goes back to working for the Stones. Was very close with Freddie Mercury, very close with all these other artists that we love and admire. And anyway, you got to read the book if you can get your hands on it. I hope to hell you do. For anybody who can't get the book or wants to kick the tires before purchasing the book, go online and find the Tony King interview done with British GQ. That gives you a good taste of his background, and I guarantee if you haven't read that, you don't know who he is, you want to read that, that will whet your appetite for wanting the whole book. And then there's other people who might know him as the person impersonating the Queen in the 1973 Mind Games promotion John did. The TV ads and the still pictures. Anyway, that was where Elton and John Lennon met, through Tony King in Queen drag at that moment. So a lot of great, fascinating stories. We did this in 2 sessions. He's just a lovely guy, and I will tell you that when you do get your hands on the book, the chapter on the AIDS crisis is the one that's going to rip your heart out. And maybe it's the centerpiece of the book in its way. But there's plenty of other fun stuff before it and after it to keep you interested. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. And it is my great privilege to present to you my conversation with Tony King. I've been doing this as far as writing books and researching the Beatles basically since I was a teenager, but I'd been aware of you at least as far back when I first came across the photos of you for the Mind Games promo shoot in Queen drag. So I knew your name. And a couple years ago, there was the British GQ article, the fantastic piece that's like, oh my God, I've got to get this guy on the show. And then the memoir came. I read tons of books, tons of memoirs, and you've got a vision, you've got an artistic sensibility, taste, all these things that made you so good at what you did. And it's just an amazing thing as a teenager to stumble into this career that I don't think such things are possible now. But I had Bill Schnee on the show recently. Bill Schnee was an engineer. He worked with Richard Perry a lot. He was on the Ringo and Goodnight Vienna albums.
I knew of him. I didn't really know him because I would have been dealing with Richard and Ringo at that time.
His book is terrific. His love of music and his artistic sensibility took him very far, as with you. So it's wonderful to read these books back to back.
Was he in LA mostly?
Mostly, yeah. Worked with Perry a lot, but also he worked with Steely Dan on Asia and Boz Scaggs, David Foster.
Oh, wonderful. Boz Scaggs, 12 Degrees was one of my favorite albums.
Oh, no doubt.
I bought it because of the cover.
That's a great cover, isn't it?
Moshe Bracha did the photos. I took one look at it and I thought, I've got to have that record because it got such a great cover. And then I took it home and played it and I thought, the inside is as good as the outside.
Last night I saw The Lost Weekend, A Love Story.
Oh, how is it?
It's terrific.
Really?
I know her story pretty well, and this isn't a major studio or producer behind it. It was so elegant, so beautifully put together. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And I was thrilled to see you were in it.
In fact, my book arrived I sent a copy to May and I checked on my post today, tracking, and it was delivered yesterday. So she's got the book now.
Wow, what timing.
We spent a lot of time together.
And Nancy Andrews, who's a good friend of mine, I was glad to see her in your book as well.
Oh, Nancy Andrews. I know Nancy Andrews, yeah.
She's been on the show as well. I didn't know that story till I read your book about what happened at Lou Adler's house as far as getting Nancy involved to help fix the gold records.
Nancy is a great lady.
Absolutely.
She was really helpful to me with the Lou Adler situation, with all the broken records and everything. But apart from that, I ended up living in her flat because she had this beautiful apartment in Hollywood. When she went to live with Ringo, I said, is there any chance I could rent your apartment? And she said, yeah. So I took over her apartment, which was beautiful. It was just below the Hollywood sign and it had a deck and it was I had it all done up and nice. And then I ended up buying a house opposite.
Wow.
Nancy and I had a lot of fun. I adored Nancy Andrews. Lovely lady. Beautiful lady too. Very beautiful looking and still looks great.
So do you read many Beatle-related memoirs or rock books?
No. I read The Love You Make that Peter Brown did with Stephen Gaines, which caused so much trouble. I read that, and I read one of the Apple books, the famous Apple book.
Longest Cocktail Party?
Yeah, I read that one. And then there was another Apple book that came by somebody Giannatos. He wrote a book about Apple as well. And that's all I can remember. I've never really immersed myself in Beatles stuff because I was with the Stones for so many years that I became more of a Stones person than a Beatles person, if you like,
Sure. What impressed me in reading your book, having read a lot of this stuff, is that there was a great deal of attention to detail and care in getting the facts accurate. And if this is coming out of your own memory or if somebody worked with you on it, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. A lot of memoirs are kind of loosey-goosey with people's memories and stuff. Yours was spot on. It was amazingly accurate. That was really impressive, besides the fine writing.
Well, it would have been from my memory, and also just to confirm, in the bookshelf you see behind me, there's diaries going back 50 years. So I could always check the diary for accuracy of dates. But a lot of the personal stuff was all from my memory, you know. Now, my ghostwriter said that I had an amazing memory. He couldn't believe how good my memory was. And he said, most people I deal with, they can never remember anything. And he said, but you remember kind of everything. And I do remember things quite clearly.
One of the reasons I ask that is because it's in a lot of the Beatle books. They talk about, as young teenagers, how Heartbreak Hotel rocked their world and changed their lives. And there it is happening in your book too.
Yeah, it changed a lot of our lives at the time, because I'm just reading a very interesting book which you should read if you haven't read it already, called Yeah, Yeah, Yeah by Bob Stanley. And it goes through the history of British rock music from the early 50s right up till now. And of course, he writes about England at that time and how grey everything seemed, you know, after the war. As children, we were playing on bomb sites. This is England now I'm talking about. We were playing on bomb sites. We had rationed food. We didn't have money for clothing and stuff, so everything got patched. We didn't have a TV, we didn't have a telephone, we didn't have a car. So the first 10 years after the war, which ended in 1944, the first 10 years or so was very minimal kind of living, but you didn't know that as a young person. You just lived the way you lived. You didn't think, oh, poor me, I'm living this grey world. You didn't even think about it. It was just you were living the way you were living. The only thing that made the difference was there was American pop music that I started to get attached to. And I started to like American things like Dean Martin and Perez Prado and Perry Como and Frankie Lane and Rick Clooney. I was loving American pop music, Guy Mitchell. And then out of the blue, all of a sudden, in early 1956, I think it was February, out of the radio came this voice and this song. And I thought, what the hell is that? And I tried to tune the radio to make it clearer because it was Radio Luxembourg and the signal wasn't that great. And then at the end of it, they said that was Elvis Presley and his latest and his big American hit, Heartbreak Hotel. Well, the annoying thing was I couldn't remember the title or the artist immediately. And Elvis Presley wasn't a name to remember then because I was living in the world of Allens and Davids and Tonys, not Elvis. Elvis was a familiar name. So I was so upset because I felt at the time that I'd heard something that was a call to arms in a way. It just woke me up, but I didn't know what it was. And I was so upset. I thought, supposing I never hear it again, you know, what's going to happen? But then a few days later, I read in the paper about Elvis Presley getting his first gold record for Heartbreak Hotel. And then I thought, okay, I know who it is. I know the record. I'm off to the races with him. And then I became a devoted Elvis fan. I had 10 Elvis 78s before I had a record player. I used to take them out on Saturday night and clean them and read the labels and turn them over and clean the other side and then put them away. So I didn't have a record player to play them on. But I had them. I had Elvis Presley records in my possession.
To forward a bit, as a teenager, you leave school and you desperately want a career in music. You don't know how to go about getting it, but you end up working for Decca, the same label that turned down the Beatles in '62, in promotions.
To start with, I had a very office boy job. I was assistant progress chaser. I was in the sleeve department that was in charge of making the covers, you know, for albums and stuff. And I used to have to run around to all the label managers and show them proofs and things. And in the course of that, I got offered a job by Jeff Milne, who was head of London American Records. And I worked for London American as assistant label manager for 2 or 3 years. But then I saw Tony Hall, and I realized there was this other department in the company that I had my eyes on, because Tony Hall looked like kind of slick, and he sort of looked like kind of person I would admire. You know, he was very sharp looking, and he was a compere at the Flamingo, which is a jazz club, a very famous jazz club. And I then moved into promotion. I got myself an interview, which you can read about in the book. when his wife asked me if I was a homosexual during the course of the interview, and I lied and I said I wasn't because I was afraid I wouldn't get the job. I did get the job, and I remained a homosexual. That didn't change.
Around the time of Love Me Do, you actually crossed paths with the Beatles. Did you have any knowledge of them prior to that meeting?
I knew about Love Me Do because by that time I was very immersed in pop music, and I heard Love Me Do and I thought it was a really good record, but I didn't meet them then. When I met them was when they came to do a broadcast of a show called Pop In, where you literally popped in and you played your latest record. And the Beatles popped in to play Please Please Me. And there was what we call a green room, which was where all the artists would congregate, all the various artists who popped in with their promotion person in charge. I was looking after Chris Montez, who had a song called Let's Dance. And all of a sudden the door opened and in came these four guys. And I was like, oh my God, these guys have got so much energy. Their energy was like a force field. It was very strong, especially John. I remember thinking, oh, he's some character, that one. Then I started talking to them and I realized that we were all on the same wavelength about American music. We were talking about things like Some Other Guy and Lipstick Traces and If You Gotta Make a Fool of Somebody, all these American records that we loved. Do You Love Me? You Beat Me to the Punch, all these great records that were coming out in America, and they loved them too. And we immediately attached ourselves to it. I became quite friendly with them straight away, especially George, because George and I had a really nice conversation, and Ringo, because George and Ringo lived in a flat in Green Street, which is very crucial because that was the flat that Tony Hall, my boss, had. And with his wife, Mafalda, the one who asked me the dreadful question. But it was there in Tony Hall's flat that the Beatles congregated with Phil Spector and the Ronettes the night before they went to America to do the Ed Sullivan Show.
And you were there, and you described this in the book, and just how exciting that was, because the world was about to change when they came over and did those shows.
Except that none of us realized that. We all knew that they had a number one record in America, and they were very excited about having a number one record. And at that point, I would say the Beatles were a big British band. They had quite a few number ones, 3 or 4, From Me to You, She Loves You, Please Please Me, and then came I Want to Hold Your Hand. But up until then, they were still basically a huge British band. And then they went to America, and the night before we had this wonderful party with Ronnie singing along to Heatwave with Martha and the Vandellas and the Beatles looking at her and going, wow, listen to that voice. And everybody having a great time. And then the next day they got on a plane and they went to America. And when they arrived at Kennedy, there were thousands of people to meet them. And then all of a sudden, that was it, Beatlemania and Murray the K. And I know that they got to see Murray the K courtesy of the Ronettes, because the Ronettes were very friendly with Murray the K, and they managed to drag the Beatles over to meet Murray the K and do his show. So then Murray the K became the fifth Beatle, so-called, you know.
Right.
All that carry-on went on. It was very exciting for them. I was left behind in England, so I had to wait till they came back. And I read about it, but when they came back, they told me all about it. You know, they were excited. They were young English boys like myself, had grown up in the same way that I'd grown up. And all of a sudden, we all admired America, drive-ins, rock around the clock was the first entree into American pop music that made a big difference to us. And we were all admiring the American way of life. And so all of a sudden they were big in America, of all places, the home of James Dean, the home of Marlon Brando, the home of Marilyn Monroe, where we all wanted to be.
Now, you had seen the Beatles performing live in England to this point?
Yeah, I saw them at the Harrow Granada when they were supporting Chris Montez, and he was the headliner. And there were 2 shows that day. There was an afternoon show and an evening show. And during the afternoon show, it became very apparent that the Beatles were going to wipe the floor with everybody. And so there had to be a negotiation, and Chris Montez had to politely step down to the second tier while the Beatles took over and they topped the bill of the second show. And then after that, I saw them quite a lot, and the Granada shows and the Christmas shows. They always used to do Christmas shows at the Hammersmith Odeon. And I used to go to the Christmas shows, and I would be backstage a lot. And then I used to see them privately because they used to do a broadcast on a program called Saturday Club. And it was a BBC Radio light program, it was at that time. And my friend Bernie Andrews was the producer. And Bernie used to call me up and he used to say, "I've got the Beatles down at the Playhouse this afternoon. Do you want to come down?" So I'd say, "Yeah, all right." So I used to pop down. And they'd be all up on the stage singing, but by themselves, nobody in there, rows and rows of empty seats, just me sitting there with my arms folded, watching the people do 4 numbers, and then chatting to them in between, because they knew me and they didn't think, "Who's this guy?" They knew who I was. And so I used to get a lot of privileged access to them. And gradually, as time went on, I became quite friendly with George and Patty and Ringo and Maureen, and I just was part of the gang, really, because we were all running around London going to clubs and stuff like that with the Animals and the Stones, and it was just a big party with lots and lots of people, and I was a privileged member of the party, if you like.
I don't think there's anybody listening to this that's not desperately wishing for a time machine right now.
It was fun, I'm telling you, it was fun. I can't deny that it wasn't fun. It was hysterically funny. Of course, we all discovered dope about that time as well. So we were all having a really good time, all getting high and having a good laugh. And in the days when getting high was fun, before it got serious and before other drugs came in and started to wreak havoc amongst the rock and roll community and people started dying, and then it wasn't so much fun. But in the early days of smoking dope, it was fun, and everybody used to love getting stoned. As Bob Dylan sang, "Everybody must get stoned."
So in 1965, just before the release of Satisfaction, Andrew Oldham, who'd worked briefly for the Beatles, he poaches you from Tony Hall to work for the Stones, plays you the acetate of Satisfaction before virtually anybody has heard it. And that was basically what made you decide, oh, this is where I have to be?
Yeah, I had turned Andrew down once before because I thought at the age of 18, I didn't see where he was going to be my boss and whether he was going to do what he was saying he was going to do. But then he gradually did, of course. And Andrew, I've just read about Andrew in this book, Yeah, by Bob Stanley, which is a great read. But I've just read about Andrew and, of course, all the image making that he did for the Stones, which was totally against what the Beatles stood for. Stones wore whatever they wanted to wear. They weren't very friendly. They were sarcastic. They were rebels. And Andrew invented all the slogans, "Would you let your daughter marry a Rolling Stone?" All that. And of course, Andrew built up this fantastic brand in the days before we knew the word brand, but he brought up this wonderful image of the Stones. And so by the time I went for the interview, I was very well aware that they were on the up and up. And then when he played me Satisfaction, I just thought, oh, that's it. They are now going to be huge. And he wanted to start a record company called Immediate Records. And he wanted me on board to help with the Immediate and with the Stone stuff. So I said, yeah, okay, because it seemed exciting. And Andrew was an exciting person. He was well-dressed, he was slim, he was a go-getter. He was a mover and a shaker, if you like. And I wanted to be in that lane.
Right, absolutely. But still, at the same time you're working with them, you're still hanging with the Beatles. And you talk about the broadcast for All You Need Is Love, being around for that.
Oh, yeah. I've always stayed friendly because the Stones and the Beatles at that time were very tight. There wasn't competition. Everybody supported each other. When Satisfaction came out, John Lennon was running around London telling everybody about it, saying how wonderful it was, what a great record the Stones had made. So, yeah, we were all friendly. And the Beatles sang on We Love You, on the backing vocals on We Love You. And the Stones used to go to the studio when the Beatles were recording. Everybody popped in to see everybody else. There was no rivalry. But yeah, I did go to the All You Need Is Love. Patty invited me, George's wife, and I went with her. And it was pretty fantastic. Mick and Keith were there. And Donovan, I think he was there. There was a lot of people there anyway. But the thing that amazes me now, of course, and I've often said this in other interviews, but I went and saw it all in color because I was there. What I didn't realize was the rest of the world were looking at it in black and white.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't for a while that we saw it all in color, but it was a beautiful, colorful occasion with the studio was all done up with flowers and scarves, and it was just wonderful. I don't remember anything going on afterwards, but the occasion was wonderful. Everybody was super friendly, super nice. Mick had a shirt on that I wanted, and Eric was there. Everybody was super friendly towards each other. It was that period, the peace and love period, if you like.
You bonded particularly closely with Charlie Watts.
Charlie and I just became the best friends and were the best friends for 50 years. And I'm godfather to his daughter and his granddaughter. And Shirley, his wife, died recently. And Serafina, my goddaughter, is his daughter. And I saw her for lunch last weekend, actually. And we had a lovely time. I met Charlie because I saved his cat, because his cat was injured. And I took it to a vet and had it fixed. When he came back from America, because Charlie and Shirley's flat was just down the corridor from Andrew's office. It was in the same building. And I went down to claim the money for the expenses of making their cat well. And that was when Charlie came out and she said to Shirley, "I've never met anyone so gay as that man." I laughed and I thought, I wasn't that gay. Come on, Charlie. We became friends over the years. We became very dear friends. And on the Stones tours, I always used to sit with Charlie on the plane. We used to go out together a lot. We used to go to museums, dinners. We used to do so much together because we were just very, very fond of each other. And that fondness came out of me being so involved in their family and going on holiday with them and going to their house in France and being godfather to Serafina and Charlotte and sharing life with them. And there's so many things in this apartment that were given to me by them, and the memories of them will be there forever and ever. You know, they were incredibly special. They're special people, and his daughter is a very special person too, and as his granddaughter. But his daughter and I are really, really close because we've known each other for 50-odd years.
Back in the 90s, I bought one of his albums, Warm and Tender, and her face is on the cover. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. That was in her party girls days.
Oh, is that right?
She was quite the party girl, was Serafina.
Oh, that's a great picture.
Yeah.
Fast forward a little bit. It's toward the last years of the Beatles that you take up an invitation to work with George Martin.
Yes.
What was that like?
Stable.
So was it something you were looking for after working with the Stones during that period?
Yeah, because the thing was with Andrew, it went up and down a lot with Andrew, you know, and unfortunately, substances got in the way sometimes. And I didn't think about moving, but I got offered the job. And I thought, well, that seems like a really stable, sensible job. And I moved over. And I had really great time with George and Ron Richards, who did the Hollies, and Peter Sullivan, who did Tom Jones, and John Burgess, who did Manfred Mann. There were 4 independent producers who'd formed their own independent production company, the first one in England, called Air London, later Air Studios. And I spent years working for them. And during the course of which time, of course, I met Elton, because my office was in Dick James. They couldn't put me in their office in Baker Street. There wasn't room. They had a publishing company with Dick James. So Dick gave me an office on the second floor of his company. And that's where I met Elton, at the reception area, when he was a jobbing musician named Reg Dwight, and he was looking for work and writing songs. So it was a good move in the long run, because not only did I have a wonderful time working for George and Ron and everybody and working on their music and whatever records they produced and everything, I met Elton at the same time. And so that turned out to be quite a friendship.
Right. You describe him quite vividly in the book as some guy on the rise, and how it was a good thing you guys connected so deeply before he exploded and became Elton John.
Oh, yeah.
Maintaining this lifelong friendship, which it's a really cool story to fast forward way ahead, how you have this friendship going back before he is the star that he became, and this through line connecting him with John Lennon and that whole story, the Madison Square Garden concert on Thanksgiving, but then going on to you being recruited by him to design his stage show in Vegas and how that all worked out.
And also the final tour. I worked on that as well, the one that's still going.
Yeah, incredible. And working on the Stones tours along the way as well.
Yeah, well, working with the Stones for 20-odd years and traveling around the world with them, I learned a lot of the stage stuff out of working with Patrick and Mark Fisher on the Stones tours. And in fact, when we did the Las Vegas show for Elton said to me, I'm thinking of using Mark Fisher and Patrick Woodruff. What do you think? I said, they're the best. They are the best. I've just been working for them for the last 20 years, so I can't tell you any more than that. They're the best. And of course, it turned out great. And then I worked with a guy called Sam Pattinson on the visuals. And Sam and I are still very dear friends. And it just worked out for me. But going back in time to when I first met Elton, we just liked each other because we both liked the same music. We found each other very interesting to talk to. We were just interested in each other. We liked each other. And he wasn't well known at all at that time. So I helped him get some session work. He played on He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, and Baron Knight's record, and lots of other little session gigs he was getting. And then, of course, he started making records under his own name. And he made one album called Empty Sky, which was moderately successful, but it had a great song on it called Skyline Pigeon. And then he went and made his famous album with your song on it. And of course, then all of a sudden he goes to America. He plays the Troubadour. He gets the incredible review by Robert Hilburn, becomes a huge star, comes back to England. I go and see him at the Hampstead Country Club or something. And he's jumping up and down with wing boots and shorts and leaping off the piano. And I said, what happened? He said, well, I had to make it into a show. You're stuck behind a piano. There's not an awful lot you can do. So I wanted to liven it up a bit. I think he was inspired by Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard, of course,
Sure,
who were both piano showmen. And then he took the hint. And then he became famous and rich from songwriting, of course, and touring. And all of a sudden, I had this very famous friend who was top of the bill everywhere at the time that we met up with John, because I did this TV commercial for John for Mind Games, dressed as the Queen.
as you do.
And that was where John met Elton, because Elton called me that day and he said, what are you doing today? I said, I'm actually dressing as the Queen and doing a commercial for John Lennon. He said, you what? I said, you heard. And he said, how did that come about? I said, I did a joke tape and John loved it so much he wanted me to do a commercial. So I said, we're doing it this afternoon in Hollywood. Do you want to come? And he said, yeah, all right. I said, well, let John know. So I said to John, Elton wants to come. Do you like to meet him? And he said, yeah, I'd love to meet him. So that's where they met.
Ladies and gentlemen, Her Royal Highness, the Queen.
Good evening. I've been asked to do this commercial. It relates to a gramophone record called Mind Games by John Lennon.
So keep on playing those mind games together.
With me with a crown on and the full makeup, but jeans and a T-shirt. I hadn't got the dress on by that time, but I was introducing them but in this regalia. And that's where they met. And then they subsequently went on to become friends. And then we did this. Alan and I were in New York. I had left England to come and work in America for Apple. John had offered me a job in Apple in America. I was working for Apple in UK. And so I came with Elton on the SS France to start my tenure as general manager at Apple in America. And we saw John in the Pierre Hotel, and he said, you want to hear my new album? And we listened, yeah, of course we do. And it was Walls and Bridges. And he said, you want to sing on something? So Elton looked at me and we looked at each other. We both said, Well, the obvious one is whatever gets you through the night. So he said, great, we'll pop down to the studio and do it. So we did. 3 days later, we popped in. It went very easy.
Whatever gets you to the light, it's all right. It's all right. Out the blue or out of sight, it's all right. It's all right. Don't need a gun to blow your mind. Oh no. Oh no.
Elton had a little bit of trouble with John's phrasing. He said his phrasing is so unusual. I found it quite difficult to double track with him, but he did it. And then the next thing that goes on from that is Elton's, by this time, is the biggest thing in America. He's touring America doing the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road tour, the first one, not the current one. And he calls me up at Apple, where I'm ensconced in the Capitol Tower by this time, working for Apple. And he said, do you think John would do Madison Square Garden? And I said, well, it's a big ask, Elton, but let me ask nonetheless. So I did ask John, and I said, look, this is kind of a big ask, but Elton's asked this, what do you think? And he said, yeah, if the record gets to number one, he said casually, because he didn't think for 1 second that was going to happen.
I did not expect it to get to number one at all. I didn't think it had a chance in hell because my, I wasn't being very well received on any level then, with the Coltexes and the hamburgers or whatever. And so I said, sure I will.
He had not had a number one record as a solo artist, and he knew that that was a difficult thing to achieve. But it happened. It went to I went back to Al Corey, the head of promotion at Capitol, and I said to you guys, if you can get Elton John Lennon record to number one, we've got a Madison Square Garden appearance on the cards. Anyway, it got to number one. I called John. I said, guess what was number one this week? And he said, you're kidding. And I said, nope, it's number one. And he said, does that mean I got to do Madison Square Garden? I said, well, you kind of said you would. So he said, well, we'll do it then. And that's what happened. We did. We went to Boston to watch the show because Elton said, well, he'd better come up to Boston and see the show to know what he's getting himself into. John was blown away by it, the sound. He couldn't believe the sound and how good it was. And then we went back to New York and we rehearsed. And then we did the show, which was and is the most amazing 10 minutes of my career. And Elton's, I suspect, as well. Just amazing. 15 minutes, whatever it was.
Right. It's great that they recorded it professionally for Elton's live album here and there, but it's really too bad that it wasn't properly filmed.
Oh, it was such a shame it wasn't filmed. And there was a talk of it. Brian Forbes, who's a filmmaker friend of Elton's, and John Reed doing it. But then for some reason or other, it didn't get done. And I just regret that it never did, because it would have been the most fantastic piece of film. Because you can't really ever describe to people the ovation, which went on and on and on. And John turned around to Elton's band and looked at them as though to say, what's this noise? And they said, it's for you, John, it's for you. It was just an amazing experience. And of course, Yoko was there. She had called me up and said, I'd like to see John, but I don't want him to know I'm there. So I got her a seat 11 rows back. And then after the show, she came back to see them. But before the show, she had sent 2 gardenias, and they arrived in a dish. And I said, oh, look, we got these gardenias. And Elton said, yeah, I think they're from Yoko. And John said, yeah, I couldn't do the show if I knew she was here. And Elton looked at me and I looked at him as though to say, oh, God, well, now what do we do? And we just went ahead. And then when she came back, I'll tell you what, I said to Elton and John, why don't you wear the gardenias? Because it'll be a nice thing, nice gesture. And of course, any pictures you see of John, you'll see the gardenia is in his lapel. Elton lost his because he was whirling around the stage. Then he lost his came off during I think he had a jacket or something on it. It just came off. But anyway, so then Yoko arrives backstage and John took one look and said, oh, you were here. And she said, yeah. And he said to me, did you know about this? And I said, yep. I actually arranged it. So he said, oh, okay. And I think that was the night that they both kind of knew that they were probably going to end up back together again. They didn't end up back together for another couple of months, but then subsequently they did. And then along came Sean, of course.
Right. Now, you'd experienced them in the 60s, the Beatles, and working a bit at Apple, you saw the early 70s working with John and Yoko before they had their separation. And then they had the separation. He's with May during that so-called Lost Weekend period. Did you get a sense of his being different when he was with Yoko versus when he wasn't with Yoko?
Yes. To be honest with you, he was much more fun-loving when he was with May. And it was looser. It was with Yoko, it was more serious, more cerebral, if you like. She held a fascination for him. That was without a doubt. And when I got to know her and I got to talk to her, I kind of got it. I thought, yeah, I can see what it is. But he had a lot of fun with May, and May was very good for him. May helped him through a very difficult time, and she was a very nice person to work with. I only have good things to say about her. She was a lovely person to work with. She was very positive, and John had a lot of fun with her. But in the background, I always felt that Yoko was there. And I remember when I went to New York once, John said to me, I really want you to meet Yoko and get to know her because she's a great lady. And when he said those words, I thought, that's pretty strong to say about somebody. Great lady, that's pretty strong. And I got to know her, and as I got to know her, I realized that she was in love with him still, because the first time I met her, I went out for coffee with her, and I was expecting this rather imperious, tough person. And instead, I met this rather fragile person. And we had coffee, and she said to me, how is John doing? And I said, he's doing okay. And she started to cry. And I got all the tissues from the napkin holder at the table, and I was passing them off furiously across the table. And she was crying, and I realized then that she really loved him, you know. Even though they were separated, she still had great feelings for him, and I think he for her, but they just couldn't be together at that time. It just wasn't on the cards for them to be together. But then subsequently it was. And sad to say for May as well, because I love May, and she and John had a really nice special relationship too. But I just think Yoko held a great fascination for him.
You describe in the book, it was almost as if he was at a crossroads at the end of 74, going into 75. He's just had a #1 album and single. He's working with Elton. Elton has a #1 with his cover of Lucy. Works with Bowie, who has a #1 with Fame, his first #1. He's in a really strong position, and he's starting to talk about working with Paul again, going down to New Orleans. And you guys are planning the follow-up to Walls and Bridges, Between the Lines.
I have to remember that by the time I had the conversation about John deciding not to do all this, by this time he was back with Yoko, and Yoko was pregnant with Sean, which is why he stopped everything. But beforehand, a lot of the plans he was making prior to going back to Yoko, I think that's what you're talking about mostly, the stuff that he was planning before. And then he called me up one day and he said, I'm back with Yoko. And it was out of the blue. And I said, oh, okay. I said, are you happy? And he said, yeah, I am happy. He actually said, I've come home. So I wasn't surprised because I knew that it was heading, I felt that it was heading in that direction in spite of all the other plans. But then when he took me to Rumpelmeyer's Central Park South in the Park Lane Hotel, and over coffee, he told me that he was quitting recording and working to be supportive to Yoko because she was pregnant. And I said, wow, that's something. And he said, well, yeah, I want to take care of her. I want to make sure she has the baby this time because she'd had miscarriages. And he said, I'm just going to stay home and look after her. I said, so does that mean that Apple's over for me, more or less? So he said, well, more or less. And, you know, then John and Elton came along and offered me the job at Rocket, and I moved over from Apple to Rocket. But yeah, it was a bittersweet parting, really, in a way. But then I did see John again one more time. I saw him a couple of times, actually. He came out with Yoko to visit me. He walked into my office at Rocket, and I was out. And when I came back, they all said, the office said, John and Yoko have been in to see you. I said, oh, really? And they said, yeah, you missed them. But the last time I saw him was on my birthday, March the 14th in 1976. And I went over to see them. And they had Sean by then. And we went out for a walk. Sean was on John's back in like a little papoose, and Yoko was fiddling with his hair and being very mumsy. And we went and had coffee together. And then we went to a couple of antique stores, and Yoko selected some things she wanted to look at. And they sent them back for her to see at the Dakota later when we had tea. Then they gave me a book called Sugar Blues, and I've got it in the other room, and they signed it to me in 1976. And it's a signed copy of Sugar Blues. And then I had a cup of tea with them, and I went to the door of the Dakota, and it was quite a big door. And behind the door, there was the window. So John was kind of silhouetted against the window. And he just gave me a little wave, and he said, "Hoodloo." And that was the last time I saw him. Then a few years later, unfortunately, he died in that dreadful event.
There's a PS to that story when you heard the Andy Peebles interview.
Yes, well, John and I actually kind of fell out a little bit because they had a lady working for them called Helen, and she was kind of tough. And I used to come to New York and I'd try and call John, and my calls always got intercepted and I never got put through. And this Helen treated me like I was some kind of groupie trying to get in touch with John. And I thought, hold on a second, wait a minute, I've been helping this guy's career. I was far from being a groupie. So I wrote to John and I said, it's really upsetting for me to come to New York and call you up and be dismissed by Helen on the telephone in the way that I'm dismissed. And it's really upsetting to me. And I gather he was furious with me that I wrote that letter. He got angry and was angry with me about it. And I thought, well, okay. I was upset that he was angry. I didn't want him to be angry. I wanted him to maybe see my point of view, but I guess he didn't at that time. But then later on, just the 2 nights before he died, he did a BBC interview with Andy Peebles, and they asked him how he got to know Elton. And John said,
I didn't meet him till he was big and famous. I met him through Tony King, I think, who is a mutual friend. Tony had worked at Apple, but he'd also worked at Decca and all various places in London. Yeah. And I think it was through Tony King somewhere in New York.
Tony King was a very good friend of both of us. That saved the day for me because I was referred to as a very good friend of his. And I thought, well, had he lived, I know that we would have been friends again. No doubt about it in my mind. We would have been friends again. We would have got over the silliness and we would have been friends. And I cherished that thought so much because losing him was terribly sad all round. It was devastating for Yoko, very sad for May. I went to Central Park when they had the vigil, and I stood in the park with May. And when Number 9 Dream was played on the speaker system, it started to snow.
Wow.
And I always remember saying to May, look, it's snowing, it's snowing. We were together for the vigil. We went to Central Park together for the vigil. And so there was a lot of rather bittersweet memories of that time, of course.
You start your book talking about the Madison Square Garden concert, and that's a great place because it's sort of the convergence of Elton and you.
And John, a tremendous high point in, I have to think, in your lifetime, certainly given all that you've seen with all these acts you've worked with. Now, one of the things that I had a question about that you may have been around for this, maybe not, but during the period that's called the Lost Weekend, when he's apart from Yoko, were you aware much of the socializing going on between John and Paul during that time?
No, because I tell you what happened was I came out to work on Mind Games and get John lots of good press for Mind Games. Mm-hmm. And then he started doing the rock and roll album in LA, and things got the way they got. And then I came back to England. So I flew back to London in December of 73, and I didn't come back to America until July of 74 when I got my work papers to take the job that John had offered me. So there was a long gap where I wasn't around, the Nielsen sessions and a lot of the Troubadour stuff and all that. I think I went once with him to the Troubadour with Elton, and I got a photograph of us at the Troubadour, and I think that was the night we went to see Dr. John.
Okay. So you're talking like summer of 74?
Yeah, we saw Dr. John then. Yeah, it would have been, that would have probably been 74. But I didn't hang around with John an awful lot in the late 73, early 74 period because I was in England. So I missed all that.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just wondering if you were around for the night that Paul and Linda showed up during the Nilsson session and John and he jammed.
No, I wasn't. I never saw him with Paul at all.
Okay. I guess where I'm going with this is going back to the Thanksgiving show with Elton, and you describe in the book the preparation for that, how the whole thing got arranged in the first place, and your key role in that. And when they're deciding on the song to finish with, and John very pointedly wants to do a Beatle song written by Paul. And what did you make of that at the time? Did you see that as any sort of indication of their friendship at that point?
I didn't make anything of it because John was very light-hearted about it.
Okay.
He said, "Oh, I know what, let's do this." And we went, "Okay, fine." And I think in his mind he wanted to be nice, but he never said anything. He never said, "I want to do it because I want to send a message to Paul," or anything like that. He just said, "Oh, it'd be fun to do one of Paul's songs. Let's do." So I was standing there and everybody went, "Fine." And before you know where we were, everybody was off rehearsing it, fast. They nailed it very quickly. Elton's a very good MD in that way, he's very hands-on, gets it going. Yeah. But I think obviously John knew that there would be commentary about it. He's not altogether stupid. He knew that people would be remarking on it, but he didn't make any great point about it.
Okay. It's just very interesting. And exactly as you say, the Beatle fans have been dissecting it and analyzing it ever since. Like, what did he mean by that? Because taken in the bigger context of, as you describe, and May describes in the film, of him sort of floating this trial balloon about working with Paul again, seeing what would happen and what people would think about that. In that context, here it is, end of November 74. And I don't know if the New Orleans session for Venus and Mars had popped up on the radar yet, but it soon followed. And that's when John's talking about going down to New Orleans and seeing Paul as he's working on the album. So I didn't know if there was part of a bigger movement here toward now he's got his successful #1 album due in no small part to your efforts and a #1 hit single. So it wouldn't be seen like he's the weaker partner needing the help of Paul. They've got parity now.
I think he had a much more benevolent feeling towards Paul at that time. A lot of the anger of the early back and forth that they went through a little bit had subsided to a large degree. I think what happened was because John had all that success, he was enjoying being a musician again and a successful musician. So I think he felt more open to seeing Paul and maybe doing something at some point. I know it was in the back of his mind that at some point they could possibly work together.
There is a audio recording of him. I think this was part of your efforts, as you describe in the book, turning a page on the image that had sort of soured him among the fans of being politicized and some of the people he was hanging with, and just, John, get out there, show your happy side, your side that's easygoing and all that. And so an awful lot of radio stuff was done. He wasn't going to go on tour, but he did make himself available that way. A lot of interaction with fans and taking calls, playing DJ, that sort of thing. And there's the one from KYA where he plays Jet by Wings from Band on the Run, and then talks about how he wished he could have played Monkberry Moon Delight. So he's sort of showing he's a Paul fan at that point too, just like the rest of us. And it's funny, in that same session, there's a request called in from you that he plays from Walls and Bridges. Do you remember that?
No, what did I call in?
Apparently you called in and requested Going Down on Love.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. You'll hear it at the beginning of the show because I'm going to put it in.
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah. He says your name.
Yeah. My favorite song on that album, funnily enough, was Bless You. I think he sings it so beautifully. That, I thought, was the Yoko love letter, really.
The beauty of it is it's not so Yoko specific like a Dear Yoko or Oh Yoko, that it's got a universality to it.
Yeah, but there's all that windswept child of a shooting star. It's very allegorical.
Yeah. There's so much to be, I think, still found out about that album, because I think people know it for the 2 singles, but when you listen to it as a whole, it's quite the statement. I think it shows him at the top of his game.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a really, really good album, and we did some really nice graphics for it too.
The packaging?
The packaging was great, I thought. Roy Kahara at Capitol did that.
With the flaps and the interchangeable faces.
Yeah, and then we did all that campaign, Listen to This Billboard, the one that were Listen to This radio ad, all those things that were posted all over the place.
Yeah.
And that was a very successful campaign, and that was drummed up by a guy called Dennis Killeen at Capitol, who was a very clever marketing guy. I got John to work with Capitol on that album. I said, look, we don't have to go outside. There's so many great people in the Capitol Tower who I've gotten to know, and they're dying to work with you. So let's work within the company, and we'll create a really good buzz in the company that way. And everybody are going to want to go to the extra mile for you. I know what it's like because I've been inside a company. I know what it's like when a big artist comes in and they've got their own PR people, their own this, their own that, and they shut you out. And then you think, oh, that's not nice, fuck you, sort of thing, But it's so much nicer if you work with people, and we did. We worked with Capitol a lot, and that helped the album become as successful as it was.
Yes, it's a beautiful campaign. Like you described, I've seen all manner of things, matchbooks and a big placard on the side of a public bus and things like that. It's fantastic.
Well, that was Dennis Killeen's planning idea, and John loved it. Dennis and John got together on the whole idea. Dennis is a very clever marketing man. He's still in touch with me. I get Christmas cards from him. He lives in Chardon, Ohio. And I went to visit. Yeah, I went to visit him one day when I was working on the Stones tour. He lives in an area where the Amish are trotting around with their carts. Yeah.
Wow, it's quite a departure from the rock and roll scene.
I get a Christmas card from Dennis every year, and we worked together a lot. He worked on Ringo's album, on Goodnight Vienna as well, and on the Ringo album. I shared an office with him when I went there in '73. Before I actually made my move, I had a corner of his desk, literally a corner, and I worked from the corner of his desk, and we became firm friends, lovely friends, and he lived around the corner. When I ended up moving to California and bought a house, it was just around the corner from Dennis, funnily enough. Wow. So there you go. But no, it was a very good period because the stuff that had gone before, the thing with Elephant's Memory and Woman is the Nigger of the World, it had a limited appeal.
And certainly limited airplay.
You're not going to get top 40 radio on Woman is the Nigger of the World. It's just not going to happen. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. So a lot of the stuff that he did before, although he was just feeling his oats and wanting to do creative stuff, in the end, he had to come back to being a legit star, start recording like one and behaving like one.
Do you think that reaction, that sort of backlash to the political stuff really shocked him?
I think it made him aware that it was denting his popularity.
Mm-hmm. Because it seemed like it was a long time between projects after that before he finally got around to Mind Games. And meanwhile, Yoko had done an album without him in between.
Yeah. I don't know what his thinking was, but as I've said before, he was a sharp guy. He must have known. I think he knew that this is not paying off. I'm not getting the kind of success I've been used to. And so maybe it's time for me to change direction, which is why when he came to LA, he was so keen on me to stay there because I was just about to come back to England. Mm-hmm. I just finished working on Ringo's album and I said, okay, I'm going back home now. So I was just getting ready to go back home and May called me and I didn't know May was involved with John at the time. I just thought she was still the secretary, if you know what I mean. So she said to me, John's coming into LA tomorrow, wants you to hang around because he's got an album he wants you to work on. And I think John knew that I was what you would deem as being a commercial worker. I was a promotion man. I always was on the commercial side of things, always looking for a hit, always looking for good things to attach to an artist, be it album covers, songs, whatever. I'm always looking for the positive. And I think John knew that about me because he knew what I was doing in Apple in London. And so I think he wanted me to stay on to help him. And then the next night when I went over to see him, I realized then that he was involved with May by the way they were sitting. He put his foot on her leg, I remember. And I was sitting there and he saw me look and I didn't know what to say because he put his foot on her leg and I thought, well, that's kind of personal. And then he said to me, oh, Yoko and I have decided to have a break.
Uh-huh.
So I'm out here. Yoko wants to have a break. It was very much Yoko's plan.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, I realized that he was going to be involved with May, you know. That was nice. They got on really well. And John and May were very sweet together. And he did a lot of good things when he was with May. And she was a very nice influence on him. She's a very positive person. And she was very good-natured. And I enjoyed working with her very much. But at the same time, I was getting to know Yoko because John wanted me to get to know Yoko. He said to me, I really want you to get to know Yoko. She's a great lady. I think I've told you that before.
Yeah.
I flew to New York and I went and had tea with Yoko, coffee, when I told you the story of when she started crying over.
Yeah.
Then we became kind of friendly and I realized that there was a much softer, vulnerable side to her.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about Yoko, it cannot be ignored. She's a very classy lady. She has a lot of class about her. She is very sophisticated in a very Japanese way. She was from a very good family and she was very correct about things. And the Dakota was very beautifully laid out, very beautifully done by her. It was a very peaceful environment, Dakota.
It's a very interesting dichotomy with somebody who spent most of their public career being a disruptor to have that sense of decorum bred into her at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the disruptor moniker is a little harsh at times. Because if you see the movie Get Back, there's nothing in that movie that would suggest that Yoko's any kind of disruptor.
Yeah, that's what you see in the film. But if you listen to the audio, it's a lot more evident. There were definitely things left out that we've talked about on the show before. Yeah, where she's basically acting as John's mouthpiece, and it's inviting pushback from the other people involved.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't heard all that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, she's a strong character. She's a very strong woman. But John really loved her. He really did. And when he went back to her, he was happy to go back to her.
Though he'd been happy in the period away from her as well with May.
He had, indeed. He'd been happy then too. He was never unhappy.
Uh-huh.
No, it can't be said that he was unhappy with May at all.
Yeah.
He was always happy with May. And I feel sorry that May didn't end up getting the man she wanted for the rest of her life. I feel it's a little bit sad for her in a way because she'll never stop loving him, will she?
No.
She'll always love him. But the thing is, Yoko loved him too.
Did you get the sense in the years that followed him going back to Yoko, and granted, you saw him on a very limited basis, like he cut you off pretty much completely once she became pregnant with Sean.
He did.
Is there anything you have picked up on just based on your own knowledge of the man and observations maybe from other people that maybe the portrait he portrayed when coming out for Double Fantasy and all the house husband stuff and raising Sean, do you think he was as happy as he was spinning himself, or do you think he felt any kind of loss? In going back to Yoko, it meant the cutting off of friends like you and Mick and Paul and all that. It was like he had a choice. He couldn't have both.
Yes, I agree with you. And I tell you why. Because when he cut me off, I wrote to him and I told him how upset I was. I think I told you that, didn't I?
Yeah.
And he got very angry with me, apparently, and was very angry that I wrote him such a letter.
Because he thought you were right, or because you had the nerve to say it to him?
I think both.
Okay.
Both. I think he knew I was right, and I think I had the nerve. Unfortunately, I upset the stars sometimes because I say what I think. It doesn't always go down well. I'll tell you, I've had a few of those. It doesn't always go down well, but I can't be dishonest. And when I tried to get through to John and I got through to Helen and she was so nasty to me and treated me like I was some kind of groupie fan trying to get through to John, just upset me so much that I had to write to him and say, what is going on? I thought we were friends. Why am I being treated like this? And it really upset him. And I know Mick tried to see him a couple of times. And I think Ringo in the end fronted him out and said, if you don't see me, I'm not coming to see you anymore.
Wow.
I heard that Ringo said, you either see me or I don't show up anymore. And I think he saw Ringo then. That's what I heard.
Yeah, and it makes sense because it seems like Ringo is the one of that world of his past that perhaps wasn't seen as threatening. It wasn't like he was going to go off and start writing songs with him or anything, but he managed to slip through in ways that the others didn't.
Well, Ringo had no political side to him.
Mm-hmm. And he'd been very accepting of Yoko from the beginning.
Yeah, Ringo was Ringo. He was just very open with people, and I think everybody loved Ringo, including Yoko. Everybody loved Ringo. Ringo is what you see is what you get kind of guy. There's no side to the man, none whatsoever. He wouldn't know side if he came across it. There's no side to him. So, yeah, he was perfect. Jack Douglas, who made Double Fantasy, have I got the name right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
He said John used to slip downstairs and eat pizza on the quiet.
Right. And chocolate.
Did you hear that one?
Yes, yeah, so much for the macrobiotics.
Jack said he used to come down and eat pizza on the quiet. And I think he saw May in that time as well.
Yes. That continued for some time after John and Yoko got back together, according to May.
I think he still saw May. But it was always Yoko who had the top billing.
And you think that John saw there was no way he could act on anything musical with Paul if he was with Yoko?
I think it would be difficult. Hence Double Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Double Fantasy was actually about to start dropping in the charts the week John was killed.
The reviews in Britain particularly weren't all that positive.
If John had not died, I think Double Fantasy wouldn't have been such a success as it was. The reason it was a success, it had a gorgeous song on it. Woman was a beautiful song. But also there were mixed reviews. And I think it might not have been such a big smash album. Well, I know it wouldn't have been because I had watched it on the charts and it was already beginning to look a bit, wasn't going to do the business, I don't think.
You'd mentioned that you'd heard the Andy Peebles interview. Were you following much of the promotion for that record? And speaking as a professional in the business, what did you make of it? What did you make of the messaging?
I mean, the one thing I remember was the film of them making love in the apartment where they're both naked. That was very striking.
Right.
I remember that. And I remember lots of photo sessions of them as a couple. They looked really good. He was very thin.
Yes.
And he looked a bit too thin, actually, I thought.
Yeah.
He looked a little bit drawn. He was very, very thin from drinking shakes all the time and not eating and stuff like that. They had this whole thing. When I was still seeing them, they were drinking health shakes and they were following Gloria Swanson's no sugar thing and everything. You know what I mean?
Sugar blues, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't follow it completely. The only thing I remember is that movie when they were lying on that bed, but that was used in Walking on Thin Ice, wasn't it?
Yes.
I did think Walking on Thin Ice was an incredible record.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so haunting.
Yeah.
And I remember that she made that video, and I thought that video was incredibly brave of her. And it was an amazing piece of video with her walking the streets with all her hair pulled back and so thin, but at the same time, so fiercely independent. I'm still here. It was an amazing video there. And I love the The record. The record is one of my favorite records. And I loved her talking in the middle of it. It was so great.
Do you remember your reaction to seeing Season of Glass when that came out?
The album cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that was very Yoko.
Mm-hmm.
That was Yoko being Yoko.
I thought it was very Jackie Kennedy.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was kind of well done. It was very startling. And it had the effect that she wanted, I think. And it was beautifully done. It was beautifully photographed. And I thought it was okay in her lexicon of achievements. I would have counted that as a good one.
I thought the glass of water on the cover would resonate with you.
Well, why? Because I washed it up.
Yes.
Yeah. Dear. I did do that, I'm afraid. And John laughed.
Uh-huh. People have to read the book to know what we're talking about.
He thought it was hilarious that I did that.
Going back to Walls and Bridges, which we both rate as one of the finest things he's done, you were, I guess, at least around when he was discussing the follow-up. You've spoken about Between the Lines and where he wanted to go. Can you talk about that a bit?
The only thing was he had an idea to go in with some, rather like David Bowie had done, and have some new musicians. Nowadays, with all the woke business, you don't even know whether you can say black musicians anymore. It's like, oh, dare I say that? Because there are people who go, what do you mean black musicians? You know, oh, shut up. I mean black musicians, that's what I mean. Musicians who are black, for fuck's sake. Shut up. Yeah. Anyway, he had this idea, and we got Carlos Alomar on board. Mm-hmm. And Carlos was going to do a bit of snooping around and see who was available. I hadn't gone very far with it. Whether John went on his own further, I don't know, but I hadn't gone on very far with it. And then all of a sudden, we were sitting and we came up with the title, and he loved the title because I was thinking of musical, the staves, you know, and in written music. And I thought it'd be great calling it Between the Lines. And he loved that idea. He thought it was a really cool title. And we'd gone that far, and there was Carlos Alomar and an album title, and that's as far as we went, as far as I remember. And then all of a sudden, he took me for coffee at Rumpelmeyer's and said to me, I'm not going to make any more records because Yoko's pregnant, and I want to stay and look after her while she has the baby. And I knew why, because I remembered that they had lost other babies in London.
Right.
So, yeah. I knew that it meant a lot to them to have that baby.
Right.
Really a lot. I don't know how long the marriage would have lasted if they hadn't had the baby. You don't know even, do you?
No, that's interesting.
The baby was a very, very big part of their life.
So you weren't completely surprised when the separation ended because you'd felt it was sort of an undercurrent in the background, even during the time with May?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew that. I think John liked the Dakota and living in the Dakota, and he liked the style of that life as well, if anything else. And I remember when he went back, he sort of said to me, oh, I feel like I've been living like I'm a student, and now I'm going back home.
Mm.
So I think he regarded the Dakota as home.
Yeah.
And everywhere else as a temporary stopping off place. Digs, as we call them in England.
Right.
He had digs that he camped out in and put a few personal bits in. It never shaped up like a home. It was always a pad or a cool pad or digs or something. It never looked like a home to me. It always looked like it was a temporary thing. So when he went back to the Dakota, I thought, okay, he's gone home. And I said to Yoko, must be nice having John back again. And she said, yes, but all those guitars.
Were you aware of he and May were actually at the point of buying a house in Montauk?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were house hunting, and I guess Mick had a place out there on Long Island, and there was a particular place that she describes that they had checked out and lawyers were involved. And just as things are reaching that point where he's going from digs to a home with May was when he got summoned back to Dakota. It's also the time where very publicly he's talking about going to see Paul down in New Orleans. So I have to think it was pretty strategic of when Yoko summoned him back.
I suppose it could be said. I mean, that's not for me to say.
Mm-hmm. Not for me either. I'm just kind of trying to connect some dots here.
Yeah, I know you are, very cleverly so, but I cannot allow myself to get drawn into that conversation.
Fair enough. Going back to your work for Apple and Ringo's album, the self-titled one, how do you think John reacted to the success of that?
I think he was thrilled. He was thrilled for Ringo because he did contribute to it. I'm the Greatest. That was John's, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, no, and everybody was pleased for Ringo. Everybody wanted Ringo to have success. So when Ringo had it, I think that stirred John up a little bit, maybe a little bit more competitive.
That's what I was wondering, because Ringo has 2 number ones in the U.S. off of that album.
I think John woke up and think, oh, my goodness, I better get my skates on here. And Mind Games was a good step back, but it wasn't quite right, 100%. The Mind Games track was a great track. It's a beautiful song, but it wasn't really RKO top 20 ads. Paul Drew didn't put it on the RKO chain.
So you think the material was not as good as he needed to be at that moment?
Exactly. And I knew Paul Drew very well. He lived around the corner from me. We were very great friends, and I got him his cleaning lady. I had a cleaning lady called Queenie, and Paul and Anne were looking for a cleaning lady. And I said, oh, you must get my lady Queenie. She'll come and clean for you. And I used to go and have dinner with Paul and Anne a lot. And I'm still very friendly with Andrew. We Facebook each other and stuff. And Paul and Anne were great friends of mine. And everybody was trying to get to this man, Paul Drew, and there's me popping around there for dinner. But they like me. They like my personality, and I used to go around there for dinner. But I knew that Paul didn't think that Mind Games was quite good enough to be on the RKO top 20 chain.
Do you recall any tracks that you thought should have been singles that weren't from that album?
No.
Okay. So on the whole, you just thought it wasn't as strong and commercial enough as it needed to be.
It was a step back, but it wasn't the step back.
Mm-hmm. I see. Do you remember the song One Day at a Time on that album? And Elton did a version of it?
Yeah, it's a nice song. Funny, actually, when we all became sober and just one day at a time took on a new meaning.
Right.
And Elton and I got sober. What else can you think on Mind Games? I can't think of all the tracks now, but I can't think of anything.
Tight As, the beautiful ballad, Out the Blue.
Yeah, I never heard anything that was better than Mind Games for top 20 radio. It was a clever song and everything. But there was still, Yoko was on the cover of the album.
Right.
So there was still the John and Yoko connection.
However, do you flip the front and the back and see the difference in the cover artwork?
I don't remember. What was it? Sorry.
So John put it together, and he's a certain size on the front, and in the back, he's closer. And as he explained, that's me walking away from Yoko.
Yeah. I don't remember all that.
Okay.
You're the expert on these matters. I'm not aware of them. Can I just stop here a moment?
Sure.
I have a feeling this conversation is not going so well.
Really? Why?
Well, because I feel that you're trying to lead me into areas where I have no expertise, and I don't want to be giving off opinions on people which are not valid or not my true thinking. And I feel a bit uncomfortable with some of the questions.
Oh, I'm not sandbagging you. I'm just trying, because you were there, you're a canny observer, your book is full of wonderful observations. So I'm just trying to get your thoughts on maybe something that wasn't made clearer in the book, but I'm not trying to entrap you or anything like that.
Okay. The Beatles, I was never that obsessed with them. I thought they were great, and I loved London at the time that they were popular. And then later on in their careers, when they all went separate ways, I kind of kept up, but not completely.
That's probably true of a lot of the fans. The magic was in the foursome, and your mileage may vary with the individual careers.
Yeah. I mean, with Paul, I loved Band on the Run. I thought that was a great album. Mm-hmm. And I saw the tour for that record.
Oh, the 76 Over America tour, Wings Over America?
Yeah, I saw that. I went to see that. It was great. And Linda was always really nice to me as well. She was always nice to me. Paul was nice. Paul knew that I worked with John quite closely. And Paul knew me as I'm basically a decent person, and Paul knew that side of me. So everyone was kind of comfortable with me being in the role that I was in. There was nobody who was not comfortable with it. Tony's quite happy with John, and John gets on well with Tony. That was the atmosphere.
And you're really good at your job. You're really good at sort of putting your finger on where an artist needs to go in terms of public presentation.
Sometimes, yeah. Not always, but a lot of the time I was, because that was my talent. I understood artists. I just instinctively understood how things were to be, even whether it be album and single promotion, or even in Elton's case, a Las Vegas show. I have very good instincts for things and for promotion and what would make a good single and what made good artwork. And when I worked with the Stones, I used to work on the artwork for all the albums with Mick and Charlie. And I used to find the art directors, and I used to set up the photo sessions with a lot of different photographers. But I always knew who was good and who was around who was good. If I didn't know, I'd ask people who did know. I mean, the thing is, if you don't know, ask someone who does. Be smart enough to say, I don't know, but I can find out.
Sure. So the era you were with the Stones began in 65 with Satisfaction.
65, I was with them for a year, 2 years. And then I came back to them in 1984 when I worked for Mick on his solo projects. And then I ended up working on the Stones on Dirty Work, and then on the Steel Wheels tour, which was their big tour, which brought them back. I saw that tour. Yeah. So I worked a lot on that.
You weren't around at the time of Rock and Roll Circus?
I was in London at the time, but I didn't go to the circus, no. I mean, I knew about it because Charlie would tell me about it, because Charlie and I were very friendly. I'd go down and stay with him in Shirley and Sussex. And I'd say, oh, how did it go the other night? And he'd tell me, but I never showed up. I never went.
Okay, interesting. I just wondered how you viewed it at the time, because they hadn't, unlike the Beatles, made any motion pictures to that point. So this would have been a pretty big deal. They were part of the thing with Jean-Luc Godard, where they're filming Sympathy for the Devil. You know what I'm talking about?
Andrew Oldham had a book lined up for them to film, Only Lovers Left Alive or something like that.
Yeah.
And they never did it. And then there's a couple of interesting films that Andrew made. Charlie Is My Darling.
It's a concert film, right?
I'm in that very briefly. I walk into the studio and you can see me. But yeah, you know, the thing about the Rock and Roll Circus is the general feeling about that was that it was the who did so well.
Right.
By the time the Stones went on, it was something like 3 a.m.
Yeah. And Brian wasn't at his best.
But it's just, I mean, I've seen Mick performing on that, and I thought he was very good. I mean, the Who were great, but then I thought Mick was great too. So I didn't see a huge amount of difference, but some people did. Some people said it was the Who that stole the show, but who knows?
Your book, as you describe, covers a huge span of music and artists. The Beatles is a part of it. It's not the main part of it, but it's a significant part of it. You had a good friendship going there with John and with Ringo in the 70s. Is there anything you wanted to get into the book that you didn't?
That's a good question. The answer is no.
Okay.
The answer is no. I was quite happy with what I got in. I mean, I could have told more personal stories about people, but then I would have been in trouble. Because, you know, it had to be checked by legal when I finished it. Faber's legal people checked it, and we took a couple of things out that they said, I don't think it would be a good idea to leave these in. And so we did take a couple of things out, but the answer is no. I think I did what I had to do. I didn't want it to be a gossip book, you know. So there you go.
You'd read the Peter Brown book, The Love You Make.
Yeah, that was upsetting.
It was upsetting?
Yeah, well, I just think that from what I gather, I think Ringo found out that Maureen had had an affair with George from the excerpts from the book showing up in the English newspapers. I remember when I went for my interview with Peter and Stephen Gaines, they plied you with dope.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, to loosen you up.
Wow.
Which is what John always warned me about with interviews. He said, they love you to smoke dope because then they get more out of you. So when I went for the interview with Stephen Gaines and Peter Brown, there was dope around. I didn't particularly like that book. I thought it was a bit mean-spirited.
Uh-huh. Well, gossip.
I don't remember it now. It's a long time ago. But I remember my feelings about it were not 100% positive. And my feelings about him were not 100% positive. And I don't think he liked me very much either, I gather. I think he thought I was a nasty person.
A nasty person?
I heard said that he thought I was a nasty person and someone to avoid.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting to hear that about yourself. Oh, my goodness, nasty and to be avoided. Oh, goodness me, what have I done?
Sounds like projection.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I had my moments. I could be quite tough when I had to be. But by and large, I think I got on with people pretty well.
Mm-hmm. So what is it that in all the rounds of interviews you've been doing for this book, is there anything that you've been dying to talk about that nobody's asked you about?
I can't say there has been, to be honest with you. Let me rack my brains here as I look out at this lovely blue sky and the trees are going backwards and forwards with the leaves on. So beautiful.
Huh.
The only thing, no, it's nothing to do with music, though.
Oh, what's that?
I regret getting HIV.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I regret my own behavior.
Okay.
Because I was stupid. Because I had been okay for years and years and years. And then I started playing around the edges. And I got caught out.
Mm-hmm.
And I regret that. I regret being so stupid as to think that I could get away with it. And I didn't get away with it. And I have a lot of regret about that. I feel very sad about that. And as do a couple of my friends who got the same thing that happened to me, got it later. We all thought we could play around the edges of it. We had enough negative tests that we thought we were okay. And then one day I went to the doctors just before the Stones tour and found out that I was positive. And it was like the worst day of my life, the very worst. And I was sitting here in this sofa talking to a friend about it. And I was crying. I was deeply upset. And to this day, I regret my behavior that brought that about.
Did this happen after you became sober?
Yes. It was after I was sober, which made me think I wasn't sober anymore. I thought, oh, well, then that's my sobriety gone. And it wasn't my sobriety. It was a virus. It was nothing to do with my sobriety. But I did question it at the time, and I thought maybe I should drink. And then I thought, well, that's not going to solve anything, is it? You're going to just have to learn to live with it and get on with it. And now I don't even give it a thought. Well, I do sometimes because I think, I wish I didn't have to take this fucking pill every day. But then now I'm taking medicine for Parkinson's. So there you are.
Do you think there's a value in sharing your story that maybe is a cautionary tale for others to not follow and repeat your mistake?
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's the idea of it. I haven't shared the story for everybody to think, oh, how brave of him. Parkinson's is a separate issue because that's something you can't control. If you're going to get it, you're going to get it. There's nothing in my lifestyle that promoted that. That is a side thing. But HIV, I'm here to tell you, take good care. Do not be stupid like I was and go out and get the virus, because then you're going to have to take medication for the rest of your life. And so, all right, so it's just a pill a day, but you still got to do it. You know what I mean? And it sort of annoys you that you've got to do it. Every day I get up, I will go to the kitchen, half a glass of water, down goes the pill, done. But in my head, it annoys me that I've got to do that. I would say that's the one thing I haven't really spoken an awful lot about, because most people want to talk about the musicians and the fun stuff. But anyway, I don't know whether that's useful or helpful.
No, it is. I think I mentioned at the outset, the chapter 11 in the book, where you really get into the AIDS crisis. And It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I don't want to give away too much. People will read it, but it's a very moving part of the book. And yeah, the celebrity, the rock star stuff, the Stones, Beatles stuff, that's all fun and entertaining.
It's actually the best part of the book.
It absolutely is. It really stands out, and it's sort of the payoff. It's like, okay, you get all the fun stuff, but this is really the important thing. If you get nothing else out of the book, walk away with this.
Exactly. And it was interesting that I got it right on the eve of the Rolling Stones tour.
Uh-huh.
And of course, that affected me when I was away. I was thinking, could I meet people? Should I meet people? It was always on my mind. And I'd have to tell the doctors on the tour, just in case anything happens, you should know that I'm HIV positive. But I couldn't tell anybody on the tour that I knew. So it was a very lonely 2 years. That tour was a very lonely time for me. Very lonely.
Did you tell the Stones after?
No, I never did. I mean, some of them are probably going to find out by reading the book. Charlie never knew, and he died not knowing.
Wow.
No, I never told the Stones. I think Jane was surprised because she found out via the book, but I never told Jane. I never told anybody. But I told Elton because I knew Elton would be empathetic, as he was, of course, because of the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which is such a triumph for him.
Yeah.
To have done all what he's done is amazing. So, of course, I was going to tell him. But I didn't tell him for 5 years.
How did he react?
Well, he knew something was different about me. And he said to me, there's something you're a bit softer, you've softened up. And he said, why would that be? Is there something that I should know about? And I said, well, perhaps it's because I'm HIV positive. And he goes, okay, well, that's probably it then. He said, but you are a bit softer than you used to be. Of course, he took it on board. But I still wasn't ready to tell the world.
Yeah.
But when I did the book, I said to my ghostwriter, Tom, he said to me, when I did the GQ interview with Dylan, did you see that?
I did, yes.
Dylan said, do you want to put that in or not? And I said, no. And I didn't put it in the GQ interview because I thought the way Dylan wrote it, it didn't belong.
Uh-huh.
But when I started to do the book, Tom, the ghostwriter, said to me, do you want to put this in the book? I said, I have to. So it's not a question of whether I want to or not. I have to. If I'm going to be honest about my life, it has to go in the book. And I have to talk about that period of time in the 80s that I lived through along with other people. And I want to honor it for the sake of my friends who died. So that's why I did it, to honor them, to honor all those friends of mine who died in such ghastly, horrible circumstances.
I think it's a very important thing for people who live their lives and are not touched directly by it, are not affected in any direct way, and keep hearing about it and can't relate to it. You put such a human face on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for those people that went through it at the time, I've heard from a couple of people said to me, thank you for saying it. Thank you for writing about it. Because it was a pretty horrible time, wasn't it? And, friends have got in touch and said, I think it's only fair that people know just how ghastly a time it was and what gay people were facing up against, because not only were they facing a virus that killed them, they were facing an untold amount of prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
They were frowned upon as carriers of this disease.
Right. And I'm sure a certain segment thought, well, that's what they get.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of that.
Sure.
Well, if you're going to mess around like you were doing, there's a degree of truth in that. I'm not going to sit here and go, how dare you say that? There's a degree of truth in it, but I'm not going to condemn people for it. It was only people having a fling, and everybody was having flings, gay, straight, whatever, in the 80s particularly. The late 70s, early 80s was a very promiscuous, freewheeling time for everybody, not just gay people, but straight people too. There were all kinds of sex clubs and God knows what else was going on. It wasn't just gay people. Right. No, but gay people got the blame.
Right.
Anyway, there you go.
Before we wind down, you're a music guy. Your life was changed by Heartbreak Hotel. and you were involved very closely with some of the most beloved music soundtrack to our lives. Can you, if I name you some artists, can you maybe suggest what might be a favorite track of yours from them?
God, if I can remember.
Okay. Well, whatever comes to mind, this is just a snapshot of the moment. Elton.
Don't Let the Sun.
Which you talk about in the book.
Yeah, but it's just a favorite of mine. And Idol, a song called Idol that's on Blue Moves.
Oh, okay.
George Michael covered it.
Oh, wow.
It's a beautiful song. It's about an idol who was big in the 50s and had lost his star status. He was an idol then, now he's an idol now. But I have to say, I liked his songs the way they sounded before. You know, it's a beautiful lyric about an idol who falls from the pinnacle of success. And so I would say, along with Don't Let the Sun, I would say Idol.
Okay. The Stones.
Oh, the Stones, my God. Casino Boogie.
Oh.
Exiles on Main Street. I love Casino Boogie. It's such a sexy, sashaying, nasty piece of Stones work. Every time I listen to it, I always imagine Naomi Campbell on the catwalk working it. You know, it's that kind of. And their commercial version, I would say Miss You. I love Miss You. Reminds me of when I arrived in New York. It was the first record I heard when I got in the taxi. And they'd only just come out that day. And I went, oh my God, what is that? And when I went to Studio 54 and they were playing it there, it sounded incredible. Okay, next.
We haven't talked about Queen much, and Freddie is a big part of your book. Do you have a favorite Queen song?
You're My Best Friend.
Ah, okay.
I think it's a lovely song, and the sentiment's lovely.
Uh-huh. It's not played to death.
Yeah, and another one, Bites the Dust. Because of New York and because of the clubs, because it was such a great club record.
Definitely. All right. Elvis.
Oh, Elvis. Too much.
Really?
Honey, I love you too much. I need your loving too much. I met Scotty Moore, who played the guitar. Backstage at a Stones concert, and I was talking to him about Too Much, and I said, your guitar solo in Too Much is the best. And he said, you know what? I never could ever play it again the same way that I did on the record. And it drove Elvis insane. He said, Elvis used to say, can't you get it the same? And he said, I never got it the same.
Wow.
I mean, obviously I love Heartbreak Hotel, but in the post to Heartbreak Hotel, I would choose Too Much.
Okay.
And Scotty Moore's story about the guitar solo that never got repeated.
That's great. That's gold. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, he was nice, Scotty Moore. He was a sweet Southern gentleman. We had a nice conversation about Too Much. And he told me, he said, yeah, Elvis, man, he could never get over the fact that I couldn't do it again. It was a lovely conversation. Brought Elvis home to me in a way.
Yeah, sure.
Because he talked about Elvis like he was his friend from next door, not Elvis the star. He was talking about Elvis, man. It was just, you just thought, yeah, he's talking about him like he's his friend. You know, it was sweet.
Yeah, humanized him. Beatles.
Oh, tough one. I have to go very commercial here.
Okay.
All You Need Is Love.
I was hoping you'd say that because you do talk about it in the book, and it's like it gives an added layer to it, what you got out of it personally.
Well, I love John's vocal in it.
Yeah.
That plaintive voice of his John's voice in it is so extremely brilliant and so touching. There's something so beautiful about it. It's an anthem, let's face it. And the other one I would pick would be Hey Jude.
Okay.
I thought Hey Jude is a beautiful song. Beautiful song.
Another anthemic piece, yeah. Individually, George?
Well, I have to go with My Sweet Lord.
Okay.
Because I love My Sweet Lord. I think it was such a great record. And Isn't It a Pity I liked as well.
Is it fair to say All Things Must Pass is your favorite work of his?
Yes, I love All Things Must Pass. I thought it was brilliant. And I think Phil Spector's contribution is important.
Okay.
Because of the sheen. The production sheen has got Phil's fingerprints on it.
Uh-huh. The majestic sort of gravitas to the whole thing.
Yes, you know, there's the whole grandeur of it. It's got the Phil Spector touch.
Uh-huh. Ringo.
Back Off Boogaloo.
Ah, that's a good choice.
I like Back Off Boogaloo. I thought it was a great little ditty. Was that the one that, who did he write that with? Was that the Nielsen one?
George produced it and placed a slide on it, but Mark Bolan was the one that, I guess...
Yeah, I'm glad it's Mark Bolan. I wanted the Mark Bolan song.
Yeah.
Because I had said another song the other day and someone said, oh, that was the Nielsen song.
Oh.
No, I like Back Off Boogaloo.
Mm-hmm. How about Harry Nilsson? That's something we haven't talked a lot about in this conversation.
Well, Harry I knew from when he first came to London, and he was everybody's darling.
Yeah.
And then over the years, he got wilder and wilder and drank more and more and more. I thought he kind of did himself no favors with the drinking.
Sure.
But he did record one of the greatest songs that was written by Badfinger. Everybody thinks that that's a Mariah Carey song. It isn't. It's a Nielsen song.
Yeah.
And it's a Hand Evans song.
Do you have a favorite Badfinger song?
Come and Get It.
Okay.
If you want it, come and get it. Yeah, I love Come and Get It.
Are you aware of the recording Elton did of that?
No, I'm not.
Around that period, before his career took off, he was doing like sound-alike versions for those budget labels.
Oh, and he did the sound alike. I know he did Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
Yeah, he did that one too.
Yeah. Oh, Come and Get It's a good song.
Yeah. So what about Paul?
Paul?
Yeah.
Oh, My Love. I thought My Love was a beautiful song.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a gorgeous song, My Love. Gorgeous. Can't get better than that.
Okay.
Anyone else?
John Lennon.
John Lennon. Oh, that's a tough one. Bless You.
Ah, okay. I had a feeling you were going to go there.
Bless You. Such a beautiful song.
It really is.
Lovely sentiment, beautiful lyric, and beautiful guitar on it as well. The intro is so beautiful, the way it floats in, sort of gently leads you into the song. It's seductive, the way it brings you into the song. Yeah, it would have to be Bless You.
The production on that album is so terrific.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a pity we didn't get more of that.
Who was the engineer? Was it
Roy
Roy?
Cicala?
Yeah, was it Roy and Jimmy?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Jimmy Shoes, as we used to call him. John always called Jimmy Iovine Jimmy Shoes.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
He always wore these white shoes, shiny white shoes.
Uh-huh.
And John used to say, Jimmy Shoes, Jimmy Shoes. He used to call him Jimmy Shoes. So a couple of years ago, a friend of mine who knows Jimmy had seen me the night before and said, I mentioned my name. And Jimmy Iovine said, do you know Tony? And this friend of mine said, yeah. He said, I love Tony. I'd love to see him. Can you give me a number on him? Anyway, Jimmy Iovine called me and said, would you like to have a meeting with me at the, I've got to think of the name of the hotel, Posh London Hotel anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think it begins with a C, the Connaught.
Okay.
He said, would you like to have lunch at the Connaught? So I thought, oh, yeah, I'd like to have lunch at the Connaught anyway, regardless of it. And so Jimmy Iovine comes in, he sits opposite me, and he said, how are you? And we're chatting away like old times. Old times disappeared. We were just like, with each other. So I said, what are you doing now, Jimmy? He says, nothing. I've sold my business and I'm just enjoying my life. I said, how much did you get for it? He said, $3 billion. And I said, Jimmy Shoes. And he burst out laughing. Because the minute he said $3 billion, I said, Jimmy Shoes. Like, my God, you've come from that to this.
Unbelievable.
From being Jimmy Shoes in the Walls and Bridges sessions to being selling your business for $3 billion. Fucking hell. Okay. Anybody else? Are we there?
No. Anybody else you want to suggest? Like a Desert Island record?
Oh, there's lots of Desert Island records I would take. I'm just trying to think. My Desert Island Discs.
Doesn't have to be somebody you work with.
I take the Cologne concert by Keith Jarrett.
Oh, wow.
I love the Cologne concert by Keith Jarrett. It's one of my favorites. I'll take a Joni Mitchell record. I'll take Hejira by Joni Mitchell.
Okay.
Joni Mitchell is my all-time favorite artist.
Wow. Did you ever work with her or meet her?
No, I'm friendly with her, yeah. I used to see her quite a lot because she was very friendly with my lady friend Betsy Asher, who was married to Peter Asher. And I used to see Joni quite a lot. I took her and Betsy out one night, well, Valentine's night, and Betsy gave me this heart-shaped box of chocolates, and we went to El Adobe Mexican restaurant. I took Joni and Betsy out for dinner. And then afterwards, Joni said to Betsy, "Do you want me to drop you off at your house?" So we got into Joni's car, and she had a Jack Russell with her, and the Jack Russell was sitting on her lap, peering through the steering wheel. So funny, she looked like driving Miss Daisy. We got up to Betsy's house, dropped Betsy off, and Joni said to me, "Do you want me to drop you off?" So I said, "I'm at the Four Seasons." She said, "I'll drop you off." So she drops me off at the Four Seasons. I get out the car, and somebody from the Stones entourage, Alan Dunn, was walking past, and he saw Joni and he saw me. And I shut the car door and I said, "Good night, Jody. Thank you very much. Thanks for the ride." And I got in and just about to get in the elevator. And Alan Dunn said to me, "Was that who I think it was?" So I held up my box of chocolates and I said, "Well, it is Valentine's, Alan. Bye." and got in the lift. Another song I like very much is "Jesus Was a Crossmaker" by Judy Sill.
Oh, don't know that one.
I love that song. "Jesus Was a Crossmaker" by Judy Sill. Look it up.
Oh, I will. Wow. I'm familiar with her, but I don't know that song.
Are you familiar with her?
Yeah, my dad used to play her. Uh-huh.
Well, look up "Jesus Was a Crossmaker." It's a beautiful, beautiful song.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. But the first record I ever heard in my life was Les Trois Cloches by La Compagnie de la Chanson with Edith Piaf singing the vocal.
It has stayed with you.
That was the first music I ever heard.
Wow.
That I remember. It came out later on as the Three Bells with an American band. I've forgotten the name of them now.
The Browns.
The Three Bells.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Browns took it to number one.
Yes, uh-huh.
But the original was called Les Trois Cloches by the Compagnie de la Chanson with Edith Piaf on vocals.
Well, I'll have to look that up. Wow.
And on that note, I'm going to fade away.
Okay. Beautiful.
Okay.
Something About the Beatles. Created and hosted by Robert Rodriguez. Executive producer Rick Way. Title song by the Corgis.